Hello fellow gardeners, welcome back to Smart Garden. Whether you're a seasoned gardener who's invested years in perfecting your outdoor space or a curious beginner just getting your hands dirty for the first time, I want you to know that this guide is for you. Raised bed gardening has become increasingly popular, and for good reason. But there's a darker side that many gardeners don't talk about. Today, we're diving deep into the mistakes that are sabotaging your harvests and leaving you wondering why your plants look half-hearted instead of healthy. Forget everything you thought you knew about successful raised bed gardening. Many popular practices are actually setting your plants up for failure. We're exposing the most critical raised bed blunders that lead to stunted growth and disappointing yields. Get ready to transform your gardening approach and finally unlock the full potential of your raised beds. Let's talk about the foundation of everything that grows in your raised bed, the soil. This is where most gardeners stumble, and honestly, it's an understandable mistake because garden centers have capitalized on our confusion for decades. Many well-meaning gardeners fill their raised beds with cheap topsoil, native garden soil, or whatever the local supply store has on sale. Here's the hard truth: just any topsoil is essentially a death sentence for your raised beds. The critical difference between garden soil, potting mix, and compost is something most beginners don't understand, and even experienced gardeners sometimes overlook it. Garden soil is heavy, dense, and designed for in-ground planting where existing soil structure matters. Potting mix is lightweight and moisture-retentive but expensive for filling large raised beds. Compost is nutrient-rich but can become compacted over time when used alone. The magic formula for raised bed success is a thoughtful blend of all three, typically a mix of 40% topsoil, 40% compost, and 20% potting mix or aged bark to ensure proper drainage and aeration while maintaining nutrient density. Before you fill your bed, perform simple DIY soil tests to ensure your raised bed foundation is perfect. The squeeze test tells you about drainage potential. Squeeze moist soil in your hand, and if it holds together like a brick, drainage is poor. If it crumbles immediately, it might drain too quickly. You want it to hold together briefly before breaking apart. The percolation test involves filling your bed with water and observing how quickly it drains, ideally within 24 hours. For nutrient assessment, save a soil sample and send it to your local extension office, or use an inexpensive soil pH and nutrient test kit available at any garden center. These simple steps take 15 minutes but can save months of frustration. The hidden dangers of inadequate drainage are more serious than most gardeners realize. When water sits in your raised bed, it creates a hostile environment where roots become waterlogged, oxygen is displaced, and nutrient lockout occurs. Nutrient lockout is when nutrients present in the soil become chemically unavailable to plants, even though they're literally right there. Your plants starve while swimming in plenty, which is a heartbreaking paradox that's entirely preventable. Common mistakes in raised bed construction that impede proper water flow often stem from well-intentioned decisions. Placing landscape fabric on the bottom of your bed, for instance, can trap water instead of allowing drainage. Using pressure-treated wood or impermeable liners without drainage holes creates a bathtub effect. Building your raised bed directly on compacted clay without creating a drainage layer means water has nowhere to go. The best practice is to build your raised bed directly on soil, allowing natural drainage below, or at minimum, add a layer of large gravel or wood chips beneath your soil mix to facilitate water movement downward. Quick fixes for existing problems include drilling drainage holes if you've used a liner, adding organic matter like perlite or coarse sand to improve drainage in future seasons, and installing a drip irrigation system that delivers water directly to the root zone rather than overhead watering that can saturate everything. Preventative measures are equally important, sloping your bed slightly so water doesn't pool, mulching the surface to regulate moisture levels, and choosing plant varieties suited to your bed's natural drainage characteristics. Imagine underground roots fighting for every drop of water, every nutrient ion, and every millimeter of space. This invisible war is happening beneath the surface when you overcrowd your raised bed, and the casualties are your harvest potential. Many gardeners attempt to maximize their space by planting vegetables closer than recommended, thinking they're being efficient. Instead, they're creating a survival of the fittest scenario where no plant truly thrives. Visual cues. your plants are struggling from overcrowding are often misdiagnosed as nutrient deficiencies or disease. Leaves turn yellow from the bottom up, growth slows dramatically, plants flower prematurely without producing fruit, and you'll notice increased susceptibility to fungal diseases like powdery mildew because air circulation is compromised. If you find yourself constantly reaching into thin seedlings because surely a few more won't hurt, you're likely setting yourself up for disappointment. Smart plant spacing techniques ensure each plant gets adequate resources. Square-foot gardening is an excellent methodology that divides your raised bed into 1-foot squares, and you plant a specific number per square based on the vegetable's mature size. 1 large tomato or cabbage per square, 4 lettuce plants per square, 9 chard per square. This systematic approach removes guesswork and ensures harmony. Additionally, companion planting, strategically grouping plants that benefit each other, can optimize your raised bed without sacrificing yields. Tall plants like tomatoes can provide shade for heat-sensitive lettuces, while nitrogen-fixing plants like beans enrich soil for heavy feeders like corn. Soil pH is the unsung hero of plant health, and it deserves your attention. Even if your soil is packed with nutrients, the wrong pH makes those nutrients chemically unavailable to your plants. pH impacts nutrient availability profoundly. At a pH below 6, manganese and aluminum become too available and can be toxic, while calcium and magnesium become locked up. At a pH above 7.5, iron, manganese, and phosphorus become unavailable. Most vegetables prefer a slightly acidic pH between 6.0 and 7.0, which is fortunately the sweet spot where most nutrients are optimally available. Easy ways to test your raised bed's pH levels at home include using inexpensive pH test strips available at any garden center. Simply mix soil with distilled water and compare the color to the provided chart. For more accuracy, you might want to invest in a digital pH meter, which costs around $20 to $40 and provides precise readings. Some gardeners even use vinegar and baking soda tests, which work based on chemical reactions, though they're less precise. The investment in testing is negligible compared to the return on identifying pH problems early. Organic amendments to adjust pH depend on your situation. If your soil is too acidic, you can add pulverized limestone or calcium carbonate, which raises pH and adds beneficial calcium. But if it's too alkaline, adding sulfur or pine needles will lower pH over time. These amendments work slowly, sometimes taking months to exert their full effect, which is why early testing and correction matters. Compost generally has a neutral pH and helps buffer extreme conditions, so amending regularly with quality compost is a proactive strategy. Here's an ironic truth. Raised beds, with their controlled environment and nutrient-rich soil, sometimes create ideal conditions for pests and diseases. Better growing plants attract pests, and poor air circulation from overcrowding or placement against walls creates perfect conditions for fungal diseases. Japanese beetles seem to find strawberries with unerring accuracy, and spider mites absolutely love tomatoes grown in warm raised beds. So, identifying common raised bed invaders and their telltale signs, well, it really allows for quick intervention. Aphids, for example, cluster on new growth and cause curled, yellowing leaves. Spider mites, on the other hand, create fine webbing and stippled, pale foliage. Powdery mildew usually shows up as a white coating on leaves, often starting with the lower foliage. Now, if you see blossom end rot in tomatoes, that's a sign of calcium deficiency, most often related to inconsistent watering. And finally, squash vine borers tunnel into the stems of squash and cucumbers, which leads to sudden wilting. Proactive and organic strategies keep your raised beds pest-free and disease-resistant without harsh chemicals. Install floating row covers over young vegetables to prevent pest egg-laying. Encourage beneficial insects like ladybugs and parasitic wasps by planting flowering herbs like dill, fennel, and yarrow. Use neem oil or insecticidal soap for soft-bodied insects like aphids. Practice crop rotation even in raised beds, planting different plant families in the same location each year to break pest life cycles. Most importantly, maintain consistent moisture levels and ensure proper spacing for air circulation to prevent fungal diseases before they establish. You now understand the 5 most critical mistakes sabotaging raised bed gardeners everywhere. Poor soil choices, drainage disasters, overcrowding, pH imbalances, and pest mismanagement don't have to derail your growing dreams. Armed with this knowledge, you're equipped to build raised beds that produce abundance instead of disappointment. The transformation begins with your next gardening decision. Will you test your soil before planting? Will you adjust your spacing to give each plant room to thrive? Will you finally address that drainage issue you've been ignoring? Small changes create powerful results, and your future harvest depends on the choices you make today. I'd love to hear about your raised bed challenges in the comments below. Which of these blunders resonates with your experience? What questions do you still have? If this guide helped you understand why your plants have been struggling, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with fellow gardeners who need this information. Together we're building a community of thriving gardens. Thanks for watching Smart Garden, and happy growing.